Deception unveiled. Rondu descended the mountain with a heavy heart, the weight of his recent failures pressing down on him. The serene environment of the mountain had not brought the answers he sought. As night began to fall, he stumbled upon a small, unassuming eatery. Deciding to take a break and have a meal, he entered the restaurant, noticing it was sparsely populated with only 6 or 7 patrons. A young boy, seemingly no older than 10, approached Rondu with a bright, energetic demeanor. "What would you like to eat, sir?" the child asked. Rondu, noting the boy's enthusiasm, smiled and placed his order. As he waited, he observed the interior of the restaurant, modest and quiet, with only a few customers scattered about. When the boy returned with his meal, Rondu momentarily set aside his weapons, a sword and several steel knives, given to him by Eagle for his missions as Silverback. The boy's lively spirit was a stark contrast to the somber atmosphere, and Rondu found himself momentarily distracted by the child's antics. As Rondu began to eat, he felt a pair of eyes glaring at him with an intensity that sent a shiver down his spine. His instincts heightened, and a familiar voice echoed in his mind, "Rondu, you are in danger. It's me, Silverback. Be cautious of everyone around you." Looking around discreetly, Rondu's gaze fell on his weapons, which were now missing. Someone had stolen them while he was distracted. Despite this alarming discovery, Rondu remained composed and continued his meal. The young boy returned to his table, smiling innocently. "Would you like to order anything else?" The voice in Rondu's head spoke again. "I recognize his form. He is Lionheart." Rondu turned his gaze to the boy, his eyes narrowing. "Stop pretending, Lionheart. You are the infamous assassin of the 10 great assassins," he said calmly. The boy's demeanor changed instantly. He burst into a deep, resonant laugh that was far too mature for a child. As he laughed, his face seemed to age rapidly, shedding the youthful appearance and revealing the cunning features of a seasoned assassin. Lionheart was renowned for his ability to disguise himself as a child, using his internal power to stretch the skin on his face and mimic a child's voice. Many formidable warriors had met their end because they underestimated him due to his unique disguise. Lionheart's transformation was complete, and he stood before Rondu in his true form, no longer hiding behind the mask of innocence. "Impressive, Rondu. You saw through my disguise," he said, his voice dripping with menace. Rondu remained seated, maintaining his calm demeanor despite the dangerous situation. "You may be skilled in deception, Lionheart, but I am not so easily fooled," he replied, his voice steady. Lionheart's eyes gleamed with a mix of amusement and irritation. "You've become quite perceptive, Rondu. It's a shame we are on opposite sides. We could have been great allies," he said, circling the table slowly. The unraveling. Lionheart continued, "What should I call you? Rondu or Silverback?" Rondu remained silent, focusing on his meal. Suddenly, Lionheart recited a poem. "In the tempestuous waves of the world, brothers once vowed to stay by each other. Now swords are drawn for debts and grievances. Old bonds shattered, tears fall on the ground." After reciting the poem, Lionheart spoke again. "I apologize, Rondu. I bear no personal grudge against you. This isn't personal. I am merely following orders from my master to kill you." Rondu smiled. "Are you following orders from Eagle, Sunni, or Heiss? Let me tell you, they are all the same person. You have been manipulated for too long. Building peace from chaos, a great idea, but it's just a lie. Eagle has filled your head with this insane notion." Lionheart replied, "I don't understand what you're saying." Rondu continued, "Let me guess. The one with the fiery eyes glaring at me is Wolfbane. He despises me because I didn't kill Ludi, who murdered his brother. Surrounding me are Hawkeye, Tiger Claw, Falcon, and Jackal. There are no other customers in this restaurant, only members of the 10 great assassins. Why don't I see Panthera and Scorpio?" Suddenly, the sound of a gouging filled the room, its elegant melody contrasting sharply with the tense, blood-soaked atmosphere. Lionheart said, "That is Panthera's music." Rondu listened to the calming music, recognizing the tension still lingering in the air. He knew this was far from over. 3 hours before attack. More than 3 hours earlier at the headquarters of the 10 Great Assassins, Eagle stood before his subordinates, his face contorted with rage. "Silverback has betrayed us," he declared, his voice echoing through the room. Silverback is Rondu. The fight between Rondu and Silverback was nothing but a ruse, a deception. Even I was fooled by him. He seeks to manipulate all the gangs. I deeply apologize to all of you. I trusted him unconditionally because he always completed his missions. Wolfbane spoke up. We should never have trusted him. He often showed softness and compassion towards his opponents. In the world of gangs, mercy cannot exist. Falcon remained silent, but Scorpio voiced his doubts. I feel something is not right here. How could one person, Silverback or Rondu, manipulate the entire gang world? If there were a powerful organization or gang with such intentions, I could believe that. But Silverback alone does not have that kind of power. The other members of the 10 Great Assassins seemed to agree with Scorpio's perspective. Eagle, infuriated, lunged towards Scorpio with the speed of lightning, delivering a thunderous punch to Scorpio's chest. The speed of Eagle's attack left Scorpio no time to react. He was hurled out of his chair, flying more than 3 meters away, blood spewing from his mouth. Scorpio never imagined Eagle would treat him this way. Without uttering a word, his eyes filled with hatred, Scorpio left this world. "You dare question my words?" Eagle shouted, his voice trembling with fury. "Let Scorpio's fate be a lesson to any of you who dare to speak against me. My ideal is to build peace through chaos and violence. Do you understand?" The members of the 10 Great Assassins, witnessing Eagle's ruthless execution of one of their own, were filled with trepidation. Despite their fear, they remained loyal to Eagle, believing in his vision and mission. Eagle, the master of manipulation, held their loyalty through fear and conviction. No one dared to voice dissent. They knew Eagle's wrath was not to be tested. The silence in the room was deafening, each member internalizing the consequences of challenging Eagle's authority. Lionheart, Panthera, Wolfbane, Hawkeye, Tigerclaw, Falcon, and Jackal exchanged uneasy glances but stayed silent. They understood the stakes now more than ever. Eagle's method of establishing peace through brutality was their guiding principle, and they had no choice but to follow it. They were bound by fear, manipulation, and the hope that Eagle's vision would bring the order they all craved in their chaotic world. Eagle's eyes scanned the room, ensuring his message was clear. "We will proceed with our mission. We will not be swayed by doubts or hesitation. Our goal remains the same, to dominate and bring order through our strength. Anyone who dares to question this will meet the same fate as Scorpio." As Eagle's words hung heavy in the air, the 10 Great Assassins prepared themselves mentally for the battles ahead. They were now more united under Eagle's iron fist, driven by the fear of his wrath and the promise of a future shaped by their own might. Eagle turned away, satisfied that his authority was reaffirmed. The seeds of fear and loyalty he had sown ensured that his vision would be pursued relentlessly. The path to his ideal world was paved with blood and power, and he would let nothing stand in his way. Unyielding control. The headquarters of the 10 Great Assassins became a crucible of tension and fear. Each member understood that questioning Eagle was a death sentence. The brutal display of power had solidified Eagle's control over his subordinates, leaving no room for dissent. Eagle's manipulation and control were absolute. He had crafted an environment where loyalty was enforced through fear, where questioning the vision was equated with betrayal. The message was clear, Eagle's word was law, and any deviation would be met with fatal consequences. As they regrouped and prepared for their next move, the shadow of Eagle's authority loomed over them. The manipulative king had reaffirmed his reign, and the 10 Great Assassins, bound by fear and loyalty, marched forward into the uncertain future. An hour before attacked the deadly elixir. Upon receiving intelligence, Eagle summoned a meeting with the 10 Great Assassins. Silverback, or Rondu, has gone up Mount Evi, Eagle began, his voice icy and calculated. The purpose of his journey is unclear, but it doesn't matter. We will intercept Silverback on his way back from Mount Evi. I want you to choose a restaurant located on a road you are certain he will pass through. Drive the owner away and accept no other customers. Eagle paused, then continued, I want you to succeed in this mission. I have provided you with a poison called Blood Serpent Elixir. This is a lethal concoction made from the venom of the deadliest snakes and the toxins of the most poisonous frogs. A single drop can kill dozens of elephants. No one will detect this poison, as it is odorless and colorless. Mix it into Silverback's food. Blood Serpent Elixir was a product of unparalleled lethality. The ingredients were sourced from the most dangerous creatures known to humanity, specifically chosen for their potent venom. The venom of the king cobra, known for its neurotoxic effects. Added to this was the secretion of the poison dart frog, a substance so toxic that it was historically used by indigenous tribes to tip their blow darts. The creation of Blood Serpent Elixir was a closely guarded secret, known only to a handful of assassins trained in the dark arts. The process involved extracting the venom and toxins with meticulous precision, ensuring that their potency was preserved. The final mixture was then distilled into a clear, viscous liquid, devoid of any distinguishing characteristics. It could be seamlessly integrated into any food or drink without altering its taste, smell, or appearance. Eagle had secured a vial of this deadly elixir for each of his assassins. The plan was simple yet ingenious: take advantage of Silverback's vulnerability during a moment of respite. The chosen restaurant would serve as the perfect trap. As Silverback or Rondu settled in for a meal, the Blood Serpent Elixir would be discreetly administered, ending his life before he could even realize what had happened. The assassins set out with determination, each one acutely aware of the stakes. They scoured the roads leading down from Mount Evi, identifying a suitable establishment where they could lay their trap. After locating the ideal spot, they swiftly evaluated the owner and ensured no other patrons would interfere with their plan. The restaurant, now a silent battlefield, awaited its unsuspecting victim. The assassins positioned themselves strategically, blending into the shadows and preparing the fatal dose. Every dish and drink were carefully laced with the Blood Serpent Elixir, transforming the innocent-looking meal into a deadly weapon. Eagle's confidence in the elixir was unshakable. He knew that once ingested, the toxins would quickly spread through Silverback's system, causing paralysis, respiratory failure, and ultimately, death. The poison's insidious nature meant that by the time Silverback felt the effects, it would be far too late to seek help or even understand what had befallen him. As they waited in the dimly lit restaurant, the assassins' minds were focused on the task at hand. The Blood Serpent Elixir was their silent ally, a tool of death that promised to eliminate one of the greatest threats to their mission. They knew the importance of precision and patience. This was their moment to strike, and failure was not an option. The scene was set, and the deadly elixir was ready. All that remained was for Silverback to arrive, unaware that his next meal would be his last. The 10 great assassins were prepared to deliver the final blow, their hearts steeled by Eagle's orders and the knowledge that their mission would bring them one step closer to achieving their ultimate goal. In the quiet of the restaurant, the anticipation was palpable. The assassins waited, knowing that soon, their target would walk through the door. They were ready to execute their plan with ruthless efficiency, driven by the resolve to see Silverback fall and Eagle's vision realized. The stage was set for a confrontation that would determine the fate of their mission and the future of the gang world. The miracle of the blood snake. Rondu turned to Lionheart and asked, "What about Scorpio?" Lionheart replied sadly, "He was killed by Eagle with a single punch." Rondu felt a pang of sorrow for the man who had once been his comrade, both as Silverback and now as himself. Lionheart then asked Rondu, "You don't feel any different after eating?" Rondu shook his head. "No, I don't feel anything unusual." Lionheart was taken aback. "That's impossible. I put 2 drops of Blood Serpent Elixir in your food, and yet you're still fine. Are you immortal or something?" Rondu smiled. "So, you did poison me. I can't explain it myself. I don't feel any symptoms. In truth, Rondu had once consumed the blood of the blood snake, a substance of extreme toxicity, far more potent than the blood serpent elixir. This unique snake's venom was notorious for its deadly properties, and it was said that a single drop could kill 100 men. However, the blood itself contained not just the venom but a compound that, if survived, granted the drinker immunity to all other poisons. The experience was harrowing. The venom coursed through his veins, wreaking havoc on his body. For 3 agonizing days, he lay on the brink of death, his body convulsing and his mind teetering on the edge of madness. The pain was unimaginable, as if his blood had turned to fire and every nerve in his body was being seared. During those 3 days, Rondu's body underwent a profound transformation. The venom, instead of killing him, triggered an extraordinary immune response. His body began to produce antibodies at an unprecedented rate, neutralizing the poison and adapting to its effects. The toxins were systematically purged from his system, and his immune system became stronger, more resilient. The Clash of Titans. Lionheart turned to Rondu, his expression grim. The conversation ends here. I'm sorry, but I have to kill you. The fact that you survived the poison is something I did not foresee. With those words, Lionheart brandished his dual short sabers and launched a direct attack on Rondu. Reacting swiftly, Rondu kicked the dining table towards Lionheart. In a graceful leap, Lionheart vaulted over the table, landing with poised elegance. Without missing a beat, Rondu unleashed a fire dragon fist, sending a wave of scorching heat towards Lionheart, forcing him to retreat. Wolfbane sprang forward, drawing his sword and bringing it down in a powerful overhead strike. Rondu stepped back to evade the descending blade. Hawkeye and Tigerclaw joined the fray, their chains whipping through the air like serpents aimed at Rondu. The battle was fierce and intense, each combatant demonstrating their formidable skills. As the melee raged on, the soothing sound of the zither played by Panther drifted through the air. The melody was hauntingly beautiful, providing an eerie counterpoint to the violent clash unfolding below. Lionheart pressed his attack, his dual sabers flashing in a blur of steel. He aimed for Rondu's vital points, but Rondu's agility and precision kept him just out of reach. He countered with a flurry of fire dragon fist strikes, each one generating a burst of heat that forced Lionheart to maintain his distance. Wolfbane, relentless in his pursuit, swung his saber with ferocity, aiming for Rondu's midsection. Rondu ducked and rolled, narrowly avoiding the lethal blade. He responded with a low sweep kick, which Wolfbane barely managed to jump over. The two exchanged blows in a deadly dance, each looking for an opening to exploit. Meanwhile, Hawkeye and Tigerclaw coordinated their chain attacks, trying to ensnare Rondu. Their chains whipped through the air with terrifying speed, but Rondu's reflexes were honed to perfection. He dodged and deflected the chains, occasionally using them to his advantage by pulling them off balance. Panther's zither continued to play, the serene music juxtaposing sharply with the chaotic battle. The notes flowed like a river, calming yet filled with an underlying tension that matched the intensity of the fight. Despite the odds, Rondu held his ground against the four assassins. His movements were a blend of fluid grace and raw power. He channeled his inner strength, the teachings of his late master Tammy guiding his every move. He knew he had to outlast and outmaneuver his opponents, each of whom was a master in their own right. Lionheart lunged again, aiming for Rondu's throat. Rondu sidestepped and delivered a crushing elbow strike to Lionheart's ribs, sending him staggering back. Wolfbane seized the moment to attack from behind, but Rondu anticipated the move, spinning around to block the sword with his forearm and countering with a powerful punch to Wolfbane's jaw. Hawkeye's chain wrapped around Rondu's arm, but before he could tighten his grip, Rondu pulled him forward and struck him in the chest with a fire dragon fist, the impact sending Hawkeye crashing to the ground. Tigerclaw tried to capitalize on Rondu's momentary distraction, but Rondu spun and disarmed him with a swift kick, sending Tigerclaw's chain flying out of reach. The melody of the zither seemed to swell, the music enveloping the combatants in a surreal symphony of violence and beauty. Panther's playing was impeccable, the notes resonating with the rhythm of the battle. The fight continued with relentless intensity. Rondu's opponents were skilled and relentless, but Rondu's resolve was unbreakable. He moved with the precision of a seasoned warrior, each strike calculated, each dodge expertly timed. He fought not just for survival, but to honor the memory of his fallen master and to uncover the truth that had been hidden from him for so long. As the battle drew on, it became clear that neither side would easily concede. The clash of steel, the crack of chains, and the roar of the fire dragon fist filled the air, all underlined by the hauntingly beautiful notes of the zither. The outcome hung in the balance, each combatant giving their all in a desperate struggle for supremacy. The crescendo of battle. The intensity of the battle escalated as Jackal joined the fray. With a swift flick of his wrist, he launched deadly iron cards toward Rondu. Engaged in a fierce clash with 4 of the Great 10, Rondu barely managed to dodge the incoming projectiles. One of the steel cards grazed his skin, leaving a thin, bleeding cut. Now, with Lionheart, Wolfbane, Hawkeye, Tiger Claw, and Jackal all attacking him simultaneously, Rondu found himself pushed to his limits. Yet, despite the overwhelming odds, he stood his ground, his focus unwavering. Panthera continued to play the zither, the serene music contrasting starkly with the ferocity of the combat. Lionheart attacked with his dual short sabers, slashing in quick, precise arcs aimed at Rondu's vital points. Rondu parried and dodged, his movements a blur of speed and agility. He countered with a series of rapid-fire dragon fist strikes, the heat from his fists forcing Lionheart to retreat. Wolfbane came in from the side, his saber slicing through the air with lethal intent. Rondu blocked and retaliated with a powerful kick, but Hawkeye's chain wrapped around his leg, pulling him off balance. Tiger Claw seized the moment, his chain swinging down like a hammer, but Rondu rolled away just in time, the chain striking the ground with a loud crash. Jackal, from a distance, hurled more iron cards, each one a deadly missile aimed at Rondu. He twisted and turned, narrowly avoiding the sharp projectiles, his senses heightened to their peak. Despite being outnumbered, Rondu's skill and determination kept him on equal footing with his attackers. The sound of clashing weapons, the crack of chains, and the whistle of steel cards filled the air, punctuated by the haunting notes of Panthera's zither. The music seemed almost otherworldly, its calmness a stark contrast to the chaos of the battle. Rondu's mind raced, calculating each move, each counter, with precision. He knew he had to keep moving, keep adapting, to survive this onslaught. He felt the burning pain of his injuries, but pushed it aside, his focus solely on the fight. Lionheart lunged again, his sabers aiming for Rondu's chest. Rondu sidestepped and delivered a crushing elbow to Lionheart's side, only to be met by Wolfbane's sword swinging down toward his head. Rondu raised his arm to block, the impact jarring but manageable. He spun around, using his momentum to kick Wolfbane away. Hawkeye and Tiger Claw coordinated their attacks, their chains striking like vipers. Rondu deflected one chain with his arm while dodging the other, using his agility to keep ahead of their strikes. Jackal's cards continued to fly, each one a deadly threat, but Rondu's instincts and reflexes allowed him to evade them, though narrowly. As the battle raged on, the ground around them became a battlefield of its own, littered with broken furniture, discarded chains, and the remnants of Jackal's steel cards. Rondu's breathing was heavy, his body aching from the relentless assault, but his spirit remained unbroken. Panthera's zither played on, the music an eerie backdrop to the violence. The melody flowed like a river, its calm surface hiding the raging currents beneath. It was as if Panthera was narrating the battle through his music, each note telling a part of the story. Rondu knew he couldn't let up. His enemies were skilled and relentless, each one a master of their craft. But he was fighting not just for survival, but for the truth, for the memory of his fallen master, and for the answers that had eluded him for so long. With a sudden burst of energy, Rondu launched himself at Lionheart, their weapons clashing with a resounding clang. He parried Lionheart's strikes with fluid precision, then struck back with a powerful fire dragon fist, the impact sending Lionheart stumbling. Wolfbane and Tiger Claw attacked in unison, their chains snaking towards Rondu. He leaped into the air, avoiding the chains and landing a solid kick on Wolfbane's chest, knocking him to the ground. Tiger Claw's chain wrapped around his arm, but Rondu yanked it free, pulling Tiger Claw off balance. Jackal took advantage of the momentary distraction to launch another volley of steel cards. Rondu spun around, his senses attuned to the deadly projectiles, and managed to deflect them with swift, precise movements. One card grazed his cheek, drawing blood, but he didn't falter. The battle continued, a deadly dance of skill and determination. Despite the overwhelming odds, Rondu held his own, his every move a testament to his training and resilience. He knew that he couldn't afford to lose, not now, not when he was so close to uncovering the truth. Rondu's enemies were relentless, but so was he. The sound of Panthera's zither provided a hauntingly beautiful soundtrack to the chaos, its notes echoing the highs and lows of the battle. The outcome was still uncertain, but Rondu was determined to prevail. He fought with everything he had, his mind and body pushed to their limits. This was a battle not just for his life, but for the answers he so desperately sought. And he would not give up, no matter the cost. The sixfold assault. Lionheart's voice cut through the chaos. "Stop playing, Panthera. Get down here and help us." The haunting melody of the zither ceased abruptly. From the balcony, a figure draped in white leaped down with the grace and ferocity of an eagle soaring through the mountains. It was Panthera, his presence as commanding as ever. In a swift motion, he drew the hidden sword from his zither and joined the fray, attacking Rondu with precise, deadly strikes. Meanwhile, Falcon remained seated, his eyes betraying his inner conflict. He and Silverback had shared a bond that transcended the violence and chaos of their world. Unable to bring himself to harm his old comrade, Falcon chose to abstain from the battle. Now, Rondu faced the combined might of 6 formidable opponents: Lionheart, Wolfbane, Hawkeye, Tiger Claw, Jackal, and Panthera. The room seemed to shrink under the weight of the impending clash. Lionheart led the charge with his dual short sabers, his attacks swift and relentless. Rondu parried and dodged, his movements a blur of speed and precision. But the assault was relentless. Wolfbane lunged with his blade, forcing Rondu to twist and counter with a well-placed kick. Hawkeye and Tiger Claw attacked in tandem, their chains striking like vipers. Rondu barely avoided their coordinated strikes, the chains whistling past him with lethal intent. Jackal, from a distance, hurled steel cards with deadly accuracy, each one a potential death sentence. Rondu managed to evade most of them, but one card grazed his arm, leaving a deep, stinging cut. Panthera, his sword flashing in the dim light, moved with the fluid grace of a dancer. His strikes were precise, each one aimed to incapacitate. Rondu deflected a thrust aimed at his heart, but Panthera's blade cut across his forearm, drawing blood. Despite the overwhelming odds, Rondu fought back with everything he had. His fire dragon fist flared to life, each punch sending waves of heat through the air. But even his formidable skills seemed barely enough to keep the attackers at bay. Lionheart pressed the attack, his sabers weaving a deadly pattern. Wolfbane flanked Rondu, his blade darting in for quick, vicious strikes. Hawkeye and Tiger Claw's chains wrapped around Rondu's legs, pulling him off balance. Jackal's steel cards cut through the air, each one a silent, deadly threat. Panthera's swordplay was relentless, forcing Rondu to defend against a barrage of lightning-fast attacks. Rondu's strength began to wane. He felt the searing pain of a deep cut on his chest, and his breathing grew labored. Blood trickled from the wound, staining his clothes. His left arm, cut by Jackal's card and Panthera's sword, throbbed with pain, weakening his defense. But Rondu's spirit remained unbroken. He stood his ground, his eyes fierce with determination. He countered Lionheart's strikes with calculated precision, landed a powerful kick on Wolfbane, and used his fire dragon fist to create space between himself and Hawkeye. Tiger Claw's chain wrapped around his leg, but Rondu twisted and broke free, the metal links snapping under his strength. Jackal's cards continued to fly, one embedding itself in Rondu's shoulder. He gritted his teeth against the pain, using his other arm to fend off Panthera's relentless attacks. Despite the wounds and the overwhelming odds, Rondu's movements remained fluid, his mind focused on the battle. The room echoed with the sounds of clashing metal, the whoosh of chains, and the sharp, deadly whistle of steel cards. The oppressive tension was palpable, every breath a struggle, every movement a test of endurance. Panthera's blade slashed again, this time cutting deep into Rondu's side. He staggered but did not fall. Instead, he drew on the last reserves of his strength, his fire dragon fist blazing with renewed intensity. He struck out at Panthera, forcing him back, and turned his attention to Hawkeye and Tiger Claw, deflecting their chains with powerful blows. Lionheart, seeing an opening, lunged forward with both sabers aimed at Rondu's chest. But Rondu, with a burst of speed, dodged to the side and delivered a crushing blow to Lionheart's ribs, sending him sprawling. Despite the pain and the blood loss, Rondu fought on. He was a whirlwind of motion, his fists blazing, his movements a testament to his indomitable will. Yet, for all his skill and determination, the sheer numbers and coordinated attacks of his opponents began to take their toll. The battle was a maelstrom of violence and fury, each side pushing the other to their limits. But as the minutes dragged on, it became clear that Rondu, though valiant and fierce, was being worn down. The cuts on his arm and chest bled freely, and his strength began to falter. Panthera, his sword glinting, moved in for the kill. But even as he did, Rondu's spirit blazed brightly. He deflected Panthera's strike and countered with a powerful kick that sent Panthera crashing into a table. Lionheart, Wolfbane, Hawkeye, Tiger Claw, and Jackal regrouped, their eyes locked on Rondu. He stood before them, bloodied but unbowed, his chest heaving with exertion. "Is this all you've got?" Rondu's voice was defiant, his eyes burning with an unquenchable fire. The 6 attackers, though impressed by Rondu's resilience, knew they had the upper hand. But they also knew that defeating him would require everything they had. The stage was set for the climactic showdown, a battle that would test the limits of skill, endurance, and willpower. The turning tide. Rondu's mind was sharpened by Silverback's voice echoing within him. "Listen closely, Rondu. Don't let them corner you. Separate them, and you'll have space to fight. Start with Wolfbane, he's the weakest link. Then take down Jackal, but be wary of his steel cards. Extend the battle, the Blood Snake's venom will aid your recovery. This is your greatest advantage." With a renewed sense of strategy, Rondu spun on his heel, executing 2 rapid shadow cloud kicks aimed at Hawkeye and Tiger Claw. The force of his strikes forced the 2 assailants to fall back, creating a crucial gap in their formation. Seizing the moment, Rondu lunged towards Lionheart with a powerful fire dragon fist, the intense heat and force of the punch driving Lionheart backward and creating a larger opening. Wasting no time, Rondu sprinted toward Wolfbane. The latter, sensing the imminent danger, raised his blade high and brought it down in a swift, deadly arc. Rondu sidestepped the attack with ease, his movements fluid and precise. With a swift motion, he caught Wolfbane's wrist in a vice-like grip, channeling his internal energy into his hand and delivering a devastating fire dragon fist directly into Wolfbane's chest. The sheer speed and power of the strike left Wolfbane defenseless. He was hurled back more than 3 meters, crashing to the ground with a sickening thud. Blood poured from his mouth as he gasped in agony, the shadow of death looming over him. Rondu's victory over Wolfbane was swift, but there was no time to savor it. The remaining 5 members of the 10 Great Assassins regrouped, their eyes burning with a mixture of rage and determination. Jackal was the first to react, hurling his deadly steel cards with practiced precision. Rondu evaded them with agile grace, each dodge a testament to his honed reflexes. He knew he had to close the distance quickly. Using his superior speed, he dashed towards Jackal, weaving through the barrage of projectiles. Panthera, seeing Rondu's approach, lunged forward with his sword. The blade gleamed in the dim light, a deadly arc aimed at Rondu's throat. Rondu anticipated the move, twisting his body to avoid the slash and countering with a rapid series of punches that forced Panthera to retreat. Hawkeye and Tiger Claw, recovering from their initial disarray, flanked Rondu on either side, their chains whirling menacingly. Rondu leaped into the air, avoiding the dual assault and landing a powerful kick on Hawkeye's chest, sending him sprawling. Tiger Claw's chain wrapped around Rondu's leg, but with a surge of strength, Rondu yanked it free and sent Tiger Claw tumbling. Lionheart, undeterred by his earlier setback, charged at Rondu with his dual short sabers. The blades danced in the air, seeking openings in Rondu's defense. Rondu met the attack head-on, parrying the strikes with his forearms and retaliating with quick, brutal punches. Each clash of metal against flesh echoed through the room, a symphony of combat. The battle raged on, the intensity of the conflict pushing Rondu to his limits. He fought with the ferocity of a cornered beast, each movement precise and deadly. His body, though wounded, began to heal at an accelerated rate thanks to the blood snake's venom coursing through his veins. The cuts on his arms and chest slowly closed, his strength replenishing with each passing moment. Jackal, realizing the futility of his ranged attacks, closed in for a direct confrontation. He slashed at Rondu with a concealed blade, but Rondu sidestepped and delivered a crushing elbow to Jackal's temple, knocking him unconscious. Panthera and Lionheart coordinated their assault, their attacks synchronized in a deadly dance. Rondu, now fully in tune with his surroundings, matched their movements with fluidity and precision. He blocked Panthera's sword with a swift kick and followed through with a powerful punch that staggered Lionheart. Hawkeye, having regained his footing, launched another attack with his chain. Rondu caught the chain mid-air, pulling Hawkeye towards him and delivering a bone-crushing knee to his stomach. Hawkeye collapsed, gasping for air. Tiger Claw, the last of the attackers, fought with a desperate fury. His chain struck out like a viper, but Rondu caught it once more, using it to disarm Tiger Claw and throwing him to the ground with a forceful slam. The room fell silent, the aftermath of the fierce battle leaving a heavy tension in the air. Rondu, though bloodied and bruised, stood victorious. His chest heaved with exertion, but his eyes burned with an unyielding resolve. He had faced the might of the 10 great assassins and emerged triumphant. The sound of Panthera's zither, once a soothing backdrop, now felt like a requiem for the fallen. The once mighty assassins lay defeated, their strength and skill no match for Rondu's relentless determination and strategic prowess. The last stand. Lionheart gathered the remaining assassins, his voice steady despite the turmoil. "He's healing," Lionheart said, his eyes locking onto Rondu. "I've seen him recover miraculously in battles before. We must attack together, all at once." The 5 remaining members of the 10 great assassins nodded, determination etched on their faces. They formed a tight circle around Rondu, ready to launch a coordinated assault. Each assassin adjusted their stance, focusing their energy and preparing for the battle ahead. Meanwhile, Wolfbane lay on the ground, his breathing growing heavier with each passing moment. His vision blurred as he felt the cold grip of death approaching. Memories of his brother Cobra flooded his mind. They had been inseparable, facing countless dangers together. As Wolfbane's eyes began to close, he thought of their shared moments of bravery and brotherhood. It was time to join Cobra in the afterlife. With a final exhale, Wolfbane's chest fell silent. The last vestige of life slipped away, leaving behind the still body of a warrior. The remaining assassins, driven by a mix of anger and grief, charged at Rondu with renewed ferocity. Lionheart led the charge, his dual short sabers flashing in the dim light. He aimed for Rondu's vital points, hoping to break through his defenses. Panthera followed closely, his sword slicing through the air with deadly precision. Hawkeye and Tiger Claw coordinated their attacks, their chains striking from opposite directions. Jackal, using his agility, flanked Rondu, ready to exploit any opening. Rondu, sensing the shift in their strategy, braced himself. He moved with the fluidity of a dancer, evading their strikes and countering with his own. Each move was calculated, each strike delivered with pinpoint accuracy. Despite their numbers and their combined strength, the assassins found it increasingly difficult to land a blow. Lionheart's sabers clashed with Rondu's forearms, the sound of metal against flesh echoing through the room. Rondu parried Panthera's thrusts, his movements a blur of speed and precision. Hawkeye and Tiger Claw's chains whipped through the air, but Rondu twisted and turned, avoiding their lethal reach. Jackal, sensing an opportunity, lunged at Rondu's back with his concealed blade. Rondu, anticipating the move, spun around and delivered a powerful kick to Jackal's chest, sending him crashing into the wall. The assassins regrouped, their faces etched with frustration. They pressed on, their attacks becoming more desperate and wild. Rondu, now fully in tune with the rhythm of the battle, fought back with unyielding resolve. Lionheart, driven by the memory of Wolfbane's sacrifice, launched a series of furious attacks. Rondu met each strike with unwavering focus, his body moving with an almost supernatural grace. Panthera, determined to avenge his fallen comrade, swung his sword in a deadly arc. Rondu ducked beneath the blade, countering with a rapid series of punches that forced Panthera to retreat. Hawkeye and Tiger Claw's chains lashed out once more, but Rondu caught them mid-air, pulling the assassins towards him and delivering devastating blows that left them reeling. Jackal, recovering from the earlier kick, tried to flank Rondu again, but was met with a bone-crushing elbow to the face. The battle raged on, the intensity growing with each passing second. Rondu's body, though bruised and bloodied, showed no signs of slowing down. The venom of the blood snake coursed through his veins, accelerating his recovery and replenishing his strength. Lionheart, seeing his comrades fall one by one, knew that their chances of victory were slipping away. But he refused to give up. With a roar, he charged at Rondu with all his might, his sabers aimed at Rondu's heart. Rondu, his eyes blazing with determination, met Lionheart's charge head-on. The two warriors clashed in a flurry of strikes and counterstrikes, their movements a blur of speed and power. Despite Lionheart's skill and ferocity, Rondu's superior strength and agility began to tip the scales. The final stand. The battlefield was littered with the defeated bodies of the once formidable 10 great assassins. Despite their physical surrender, the indomitable spirit of these warriors refused to bow down to defeat. Jackal, with his last ounce of strength, hurled his deadly iron cards toward Rondu, then lunged with a concealed short sword. Rondu deftly dodged the flying cards, pivoting to avoid their lethal trajectory. With a swift, spinning kick to Jackal's head, followed by a powerful straight kick to his chest, Rondu sent Jackal crashing to the ground. Jackal collapsed, breathing heavily. He looked up at Rondu with defiant eyes, a smirk playing on his lips as he succumbed to his injuries, staring at the ceiling with a final smile before fading into death. With Jackal's fall, the fight now pitted Rondu against the remaining 4 assassins. Although the battle had turned in Rondu's favor, the unyielding resolve of his opponents remained unbroken. These warriors had weathered countless battles, their spirits forged in the crucible of relentless conflict. Eagle's mastery in manipulating them for his schemes was undeniable, but so was his success in molding some of the greatest fighters, loyal to the core. Hawkeye and Tiger Claw, undeterred, launched their chains simultaneously at Rondu. In a split second, Rondu caught the chains mid-air, pulling both assassins toward him with tremendous force. As they hurtled closer, Rondu unleashed 2 devastating fire dragon fist punches, one smashing into Hawkeye's head and the other into Tiger Claw's face. The impact sent them flying back, crashing onto the ground. Hawkeye, unable to speak, crawled over to grasp Tiger Claw's hand. Tiger Claw, barely whispering, said, "Senior brother, we've reached the end of our path today. We have no regrets. We both believed in the peace Eagle promised for this world. We sacrificed our lives for that ideal." Hawkeye nodded, a serene smile spreading across his face. Together, they closed their eyes and passed into eternity, side by side. As Lionheart and Panthera witnessed their comrades fall one by one under Rondu's relentless assault, their hearts filled with sorrow and rage. Lionheart's anguish turned into a furious roar as he and Panthera launched a final, desperate attack. With their last reserves of strength, they charged at Rondu, weapons swinging. Rondu, now fully in the rhythm of battle, sidestepped Lionheart's dual short sabers, feeling the heat of Panthera's blade was past his face. He countered with a series of swift, precise movements, using every ounce of his skill to evade their attacks. Lionheart, driven by grief and desperation, swung wildly, his strikes lacking the precision they once had. Panthera, despite his fatigue, moved with grace, but the exhaustion was evident in his eyes. Seizing an opportunity, Rondu deflected Lionheart's attack and delivered a powerful kick to his chest, sending him sprawling to the ground. Panthera, seeing his leader fall, let out a cry of rage and lunged at Rondu with his sword. Rondu caught Panthera's wrist, twisting it and forcing him to drop the weapon. With a swift, decisive motion, Rondu struck Panthera with a fire dragon fist to the gut, leaving him gasping for air and collapsing beside Lionheart. The fight was over. Rondu stood amidst the bodies of the fallen assassins, his own body bruised and battered but his spirit unbroken. Lionheart and Panthera lay on the ground, their breaths shallow and labored. Lionheart, his voice weak, turned to Panthera. "It's over, Panthera. We've given everything. The fallen ideals." Rondu turned to Falcon, his voice solemn yet authoritative. "Go. Deliver my message to Eagle that I will come for him. But know this, Eagle will not spare you either. Farewell, old comrade." Falcon's eyes filled with a mix of sorrow and resignation. "Farewell, Silverback. This may be the last time I see you." With heavy steps, Falcon left the restaurant, each stride weighed down by the knowledge of his impending doom. Rondu surveyed the scene around him. Bodies of the fallen lay strewn across the floor, a testament to the ferocity of the battle that had just taken place. The once lively restaurant was now a silent monument to the deadly confrontation. Amidst the chaos and bloodshed, the figures of Lionheart and Panthera lay motionless, their breaths growing weaker with each passing moment. The inevitability of death loomed over them like a dark cloud. A deep sadness welled up within Rondu as he contemplated the fate of the 10 great assassins. These warriors were not just enemies, they were some of the most formidable and courageous fighters the world had ever known. They had trained tirelessly, fought bravely, and faced countless battles. Yet here they lay, defeated and dying, victims of a flawed ideology. Lionheart, the fierce and unwavering leader, had always believed in Eagle's vision of peace through chaos. His dedication to the cause was unshakable, his loyalty to Eagle absolute. Even now, in his final moments, he clung to the belief that their sacrifices were for a greater good. Panthera, the elegant and deadly swordsman, had followed Lionheart with a steadfast heart. His skill with the blade was unmatched, and his dedication to the 10 great assassins was beyond question. As his life ebbed away, he reflected on the dreams of peace that had driven him to fight so fiercely. Rondu looked around one last time, taking in the scene of devastation. The silence was deafening, the weight of loss palpable. With a deep breath, he turned and walked away, leaving behind the fallen warriors who had given everything for a mistaken cause. As he exited the restaurant, the weight of the day's events bore heavily on him. The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear: he would confront Eagle, the mastermind behind the lies and manipulation. The fight for truth and justice was far from over, and Rondu was determined to see it through, honoring the memory of those who had fallen along the way. The wounds of the Lionheart. Lionheart struggled to drag his battered body towards the door, each movement a painful reminder of the life that was slowly slipping away from him. Propping his head against the doorframe, he gazed out into the distance, his vision blurring. In the wavering light, he saw a figure that made his heart ache with a bittersweet nostalgia: Lucia, the woman he had loved so deeply, dancing in the open field as if beckoning him to join her. "Come dance with me," she called, her voice as enchanting as ever. A weary smile formed on Lionheart's lips. His real name was Murus, and he carried within him a tale of unrequited love and profound sorrow that he had never shared with anyone. Before he became Lionheart, before he followed Eagle, Murus had been a poet, known for his heartfelt verses and gentle soul. He had fallen hopelessly in love with Lucia, the most beautiful woman in their village, famed for her captivating dances that seemed to transport onlookers to a realm of ethereal beauty. Despite Murus' talent for poetry and his kind heart, Lucia did not reciprocate his feelings. She found herself drawn to Zamo, a tall and handsome man whose presence commanded attention. The day Lucia and Zamo were wed was a day of immense heartache for Muris. It felt like a dagger had been driven into his heart, tearing apart his hopes and dreams. In his despair, Muris found solace only in his dreams, where he could envision a life with Lucia that reality denied him. His poetry, tinged with the anguish of his unfulfilled love, became even more poignant and moving. But fate was cruel to Lucia as well. After a few short months of marriage, Zamo abandoned her for another, leaving Lucia in a state of desolation and heartbreak. When Muris learned of Zamo's betrayal, his sorrow turned to rage. He armed himself with 2 short swords and sought out Zamo, who was now living with his new lover. Face to face with Zamo, Muris demanded, "Come back home, Zamo. Lucia is waiting for you." Zamo scoffed, looking down at the smaller man before him. "Why should I go back? It's none of your business." Muris, determined and filled with a righteous fury, asked one last time, "Will you come back, or must I force you?" Zamo, dismissive and arrogant, responded with a punch aimed at Muris. But Muris was quick. He drew his blades and attacked with a speed and ferocity that left Zamo no chance to react. The betrayal and pain of Lucia's suffering fueled his every strike. Zamo fell, his life ending in a pool of his own blood. Lucia, upon hearing of Zamo's death, rushed to Muris' home. Her face was a mask of grief and rage. "Why did you kill him?" she demanded, tears streaming down her face. "You have shattered my heart more than he ever did. Kill me too, if you have any mercy left." Muris, caught off guard and heartbroken, stammered, I couldn't bear to see you suffer, Lucia. I couldn't kill you. You are everything to me." Lucia collapsed in sobs. "Since Zamo died, I've had no reason to live. Even though he wronged me, he didn't deserve to die. I can't bear this pain." In a moment of desperate grief, Lucia seized the very sabers that had killed Zamo and plunged them into her own chest. Blood poured from her mouth as she whispered, "I never loved you, and I never will. My love for Zamo is eternal." Muris was paralyzed with horror as Lucia's life slipped away. Her final words echoed in his mind, a cruel reminder of his unreciprocated love. His screams of anguish filled the silent house, a house that seemed to absorb his sorrow and rage. In the aftermath of Lucia's death, Muris abandoned his home, the place now tainted with memories of loss and heartbreak. He carried the short swords with him, symbols of his sorrow and his rage. His path led him to Eagle, where he took on the name Lionheart and became one of the legendary 10 great assassins. Yet, no matter how many battles he fought or victories he claimed, the wounds of his past never fully healed. The pain of Lucia's rejection and her tragic end haunted him, shaping the fierce and relentless warrior he had become. Each strike he delivered in battle was fueled by the same anguish that had driven him to kill Zamo, and each victory was a hollow echo of the love he had lost. Now, as he lay dying, Lionheart's mind drifted back to those memories, the dance of Lucia in the distance, a poignant reminder of a life that could never be. The final curtain falls. Lionheart, with a final surge of strength, recited a poem that had long lingered in his heart, a testament to the love he had lost and the sorrow he had carried. "Love glides softly through my hands, like a flowing river, never to return. The wanderer roams through countless years, turns back, longing for an old love's yearn." As the last words escaped his lips, he closed his eyes and embraced the peace that had eluded him in life. A tranquil smile played upon his face as he finally found solace in the arms of death. Panthera, his body battered and broken, crawled towards Lionheart, his comrade and confidant. "Wait for me, Lionheart. I want to go with you," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the silence of the room. Panthera's real name was Luis, a prodigious musician whose melodies could stir the hardest of hearts. Luis was an enigma. Unlike Lionheart, who was driven by unrequited love, Luis was indifferent to the affections that surrounded him. Countless beautiful women had tried to capture his heart, but he remained distant, his passions directed solely towards his music and his friendship with Muris, the man who would become Lionheart. Luis had always admired Miras's poignant poetry, finding a kindred spirit in the man who could transform sorrow into art. Their bond was forged in the fires of their respective pains, one from the wounds of love, the other from a life of emotional detachment. When Miras decided to follow Eagle and become part of the 10 Great Assassins, Luis did not hesitate to join him, becoming Panthera, the poetic musician turned warrior. As Panthera lay dying beside his fallen friend, he thought of the many battles they had fought together and the unbreakable bond they had shared. He had no regrets about the path he had chosen, for it had allowed him to stand by Miras's side until the very end. He reached out, his hand finding Lionheart's, and together, they faced the final curtain.